welcome for being here. We are so excited to have you. Let me get my screen shared here and we'll do some quick introductions. So as April mentioned, thank you so much for introducing us. My name is Dr. Jackie Duerr. My pronouns are she, her, hers. And welcome to Started from the Bottom, Now We're Here. Maybe some of you heard that with a really good rhythm behind it. I hope you did. Lindsay and I have a good sense of, I like to think we have a good sense of humor. And a good taste in music. So we are building a centralized transfer center on a decentralized campus. Lindsay, would you want to introduce yourself as well, please?
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Jackie. Hi, everyone. I am Dr. Lindsay Romasanta. Pronouns are she and hers, and I serve as Director of Student Success Programs at UC San Diego. It's so wonderful to see all of your amazing, phenomenal introductions in the chat, and we look forward to talking to you a little bit more about our experience in launching the Transfer Hub at UC San Diego. Thanks again for joining us.
And keep talking to one another in the chat. You know, this is how we learn from each other. We're really excited that you're here. Today, we are going to, when you leave this session, we're hoping you're going to apply some critical questions to assess your campus readiness for a transfer receptive culture, develop a scalable transfer-centered support, which is not bound by time or space, which is great considering the environment in which we live. We're going to talk about cultivating student leaders as transfer agents for student success and how to utilize something called the campus community bell curve to identify stakeholders for creating a transfer receptive culture. So that's what we're going to cover today in a very short amount of time. How are we going to do it? We're going to take some time to get to know you all in this virtual room. We're going to share a small little bit about UC San Diego and what we're all about. We're going to talk about how we built a transfer center leveraging our stakeholders. So if you walk away from anything from this session, it's going to be all about leveraging stakeholders and how we did it during a pandemic nonetheless, and how you can leverage your stakeholders. We're going to have you reflect a lot about the great people who are on your campus who can help out. So to start things off though, we really want you to, we want to get to know who you are in this room. So if you want to use your phone, you can pull up this QR code. Otherwise, you can go to menti.com. I'm actually going to transition my screen. Don't worry, we're going to put the link in the chat for y'all to get to this site. Give me a quick minute here. So what we want you to do is go to menti.com and use the code 9099372 to access this. And we just want to know who y'all are. Tell us a little bit about what state you're Zooming from. We got another question for you coming in just a little bit, so we're going to transition the slide, but let's start with, what state are you Zooming into this session from? There we go. Here we are. Everyone's information is populating now. So I see Oregon is really, a lot of people, a lot of Oregonians, I guess. I'm gonna assume that's what it is. Feel free to correct me in the chat. I'll be really curious. I think one of the unique things about this conference is that we really get the opportunity to get to know people from all sorts of areas around the nation, and it just makes it extra special. So it's really beautiful to see the eclecticism that's in this room. As I predicted, yeah, California is pretty big, but it looks like we've got a lot of individuals from Oregon here. Maybe someone from Oregon is, maybe there's a group from Oregon starting a transfer center. That's awesome. Texas and Georgia too. I hope those who are joining us from Texas, I hope you're staying nice and warm. I know it's been very, very chilly, and that might be an understatement, right? Okay, so I'm gonna go to the next slide here. Give me a minute. And now we just want to know from you all, what type of institution do you serve? So, great, this is populating a lot faster. So if you need to, your computer will probably prompt you that, you know, we move to the next slide. So feel free to move to the next slide if need be. So we've got a lot of individuals from a four-year university, a couple folks from the community college. We're excited to see you. And for anyone who's other, again, feel free to share in the chat on what type of organization you are representing. A lot of four-year university folks here. That's awesome. Wow, this is great. Okay, so I've got a scenario for you, all right? We're gonna move to a scenario question. Let's see here. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to read this and then we're going to go to the next slide. So you receive an important email from your campus president or chancellor, whoever it might be for you. They want you to identify a committee you can work with to develop a proposal for transfer specific support. This proposal may gain access to unrestricted funds if it is cross-collaborative and works across silos. Which response sounds more like you? Which response sounds more like you? So, are you excited? You have a ton of new ideas you want to take on. Maybe this sounds new, I'm on board. Maybe I've heard about successful steering committees like this, and I would love to give it a try. Maybe so many others have done something like this, I guess I will too. Or maybe, do I have to? Which is also okay, right? Do I have to? Maybe your plate is really full and you're very much in this do I have to mode. So we've got a lot of innovators in here, people who are excited to take on new ideas. That's super cool. I'm excited to see that. I'd like to say that I can be an innovator too, but I think also it depends on my mood. All right, keep this in mind. We're going to go back to this when it comes to what sounds most like you. We're going to go back to this when you're given a project, what resonates with you the most, okay? So I'm going to go back to our presentation here and tell you a very quickly about UC San Diego. So UC San Diego is a research-based institution. Almost 31,000 of the undergraduate, there are almost 31,000 undergraduates, of which about 7,500 are transfer students. So that's 24%. I will share with you though that for every incoming class recently, 1 in 3 have been transfer students. So we're averaging about a 33% transfer undergraduate cohort recently, right? So we do have a college model with unique visions and GE patterns. What that means is every student is placed within a different college. That means transfer students have different GE patterns based on their college. And colleges are not associated with majors. So what this results in is a matrixed organization structure contingent on cross-campus collaboration. We really need to make sure that we work together for a unified transfer experience if possible. And for some more context for you, the reason why there is a UCSD Triton Transfer Hub is because of student voices and advocates who are staff and students. They really said that transfers needed support and because of their unique experiences. And that is what created the Triton Transfer Hub. So October 2019, that centralized transfer support was announced at UC San Diego. January 2020, we opened our physical doors and we were really excited. And then March in 2020, you all know what happened. With COVID-19, we closed our physical doors and opened our virtual spaces, which provide a lot of opportunity and a lot of complications along the way when it came to partnerships and just growth, right? So Lindsay's going to take it from here to talk a little bit about how we worked through it.
Thanks so much, Jackie, and I really appreciate all the folks engaging in the chat. So one of the things that I think is so fascinating about working at a place like UC San Diego, which is not as unique as it sounds. We've come across lots of other institutions that do also have this matrix organizational culture. And if you could just envision an organizational structural map with a bunch of dotted lines, that is exactly what a matrix organizational culture is. So how do you then at a place that's so high stakes, where a third of the undergraduate student body is transfer, how do you then encourage incentivization, collaboration, and innovative ideas when you can't tell them what to do, right? You have no carrot necessarily, and that there's this really high charge. So we're really fortunate to be able to bring Jackie's expertise and to hire her and her phenomenal leadership and brilliant ideas. But there's also this piece of making sure that we're influencing both relationship capital and performance capital. So we're going to introduce briefly 2 theories that we felt like really validated the experience that Jackie and the rest of our leadership team encountered as we tried to figure out how do we navigate all of these different stakeholders, players, innovative ideas, demands, and also with not that many resources. So next slide, please, Jackie. So the first concept is familiar for a lot of people. It's Rogers' diffusion of innovation theory, which is influenced by lots of different disciplines. It started with looking at actually rural anthropology and rural sociology. What are the different aspects, for example, that agricultural people were considering so that they could turn over land faster? So over time, this theory really takes a look at how do you get an innovative idea to gain critical mass? So for example, back in the day, we heard about this white box called an iPhone. We had no idea what it would do, right? So if you were to envision this innovative idea like an iPhone, were you the kind of person that was first in line to be outside the Apple doors to make sure that you had the latest and greatest iPhone before you even really knew what it was? Or were you someone like me that's going to wait to see until everyone else has figured it out and worked out all of the bugs before you buy one? So that is the most layman example that we could use to think about this concept of Rogers' diffusion of innovation theory. And that's really something that Jackie and I faced as we were thinking about how can we get all of these decentralized folks to really consider that we're all on the same page about being student-centered and transfer receptive about a really important student population on our campus. So you'll see these different categories: innovators, early adopters, early majority, late majority, and laggards. And we'll explain a little bit more in the next slide. All right, so in thinking about that iPhone example, or if you are someone who's being charged with coming up with a transfer success initiative, a transfer center, I really want you to start thinking about, where is it that the folks fall? So innovators are going to be those people that are the risk takers. They are super excited and really ambitious about this idea. Usually the folks that are really passionate about making sure that this happens. And then you'll sort of see the spectrum where laggards are on the other end. So these are folks that are more conservative in nature. They're not really sure. Is this really going to happen? There'll probably be lots of questions that they'll have before they actually move forward with this innovation theory. So as you're thinking about the different stakeholders and people on your campus that you have to collaborate with, especially in a time like now when a lot of us are facing decreased budgets, less resources, and also, to be frank, really tired and exhausted transfer champions, right? You all have been hustling for over a year now in this virtual environment. So we recognize that there's lots of different skill sets that are required so that we can politically navigate landscapes for the benefit of our transfer students. So moving on to the next slide, Jackie. Thank you. You all had an opportunity to go through this scenario that's actually something that Jackie and I have experienced multiple times, where it's someone particularly important, right? I'm sure you all have opened up emails late at night and there's that one name that stands out to you that sometimes make, the hairs on the back of your neck stand up, someone probably really important, and they might ask these kinds of questions. So really reflect. It was really wonderful to see, and that's probably why you all are here at NISTS, that so many folks were the innovators, people that are going to be the champions and have lots of phenomenal ideas, but then really considering what about the other folks, right? And if those other folks are a late majority, but happen to be a really critical campus partner, what are ways and how do you spend your energy so that they can get on board? Next slide, Jackie. Cool. So one thing that I think is particularly important, we know that being a transfer champion requires a lot of subject matter expertise. It's really important to know what is it that transfer students need. And we handle that through making sure that we had assessment pieces, that we were using the voices of students to craft our ideas, and Jackie will talk a little bit more about those specifics. But one thing that I think is often untapped is what is the additional soft skills that's needed of transfer champions so that you can make innovative things happen for transfer students. And there's this concept of being a boundary expander. And it's really someone who's super talented in activating human capital so that you can link ideas and innovative structures, no matter who it is or where they sit in an organizational structure. So I think that's something that people who are invested in transfer student success really need to consider is how can I build the skill sets to be a really solid, strong relationship builder, and how do I spend my energies on the folks who can make those things happen? So one concept that is really helpful is really considering this concept called campus community bell curve. And this is from a book that has been really influential for a lot of our student success strategies. So if you are looking for a professional development read, please take a look at this book by Habley, Bloom, and Robbins. And they introduced this concept called the campus community bell curve. And we all know that even if someone has a certain level of positionality, it doesn't always mean that they're going to be the people that you want to make sure that you're spending the most time with when you're trying to make an innovative idea happen, such as a transfer center like we embarked on. So it really asks us to consider who are the opinion leaders, who are the naysayers or cynics, who are the key influencers, who are your collaborators, and who are your activists. And what this campus community bell curve actually suggests is that, yes, it's important to know who your opinion leaders are, who are your naysayers or cynics, but it's actually really pivotal to consider how key influencers, collaborators, and activists, once you figure out who those folks are on your campus, those are the people that you actually want to spend the most energy on when you're on a startup change, because that's when implementation can really occur. Next slide, Jackie. So here is just a really quick snapshot that really talks about those folks, right? Cynics, they often will be the ones that are cranky. They'll ask you things like, how will this be funded? What am I going to get out of it? Skeptics are going to be, well, prove it, right? How are your ideas really going to happen? So we all know those folks on our campus. They're there and they're there for a reason. And I'm sure they're also awesome transfer champions. But if you are someone who's trying to get a startup, you want to move the pendulum to be really influencing and making your coffee dates, your sponsorship opportunities, the folks that you want to invite on hiring committees, the folks that you want to invite on program proposals with. You want to work with the collaborators and the activists. And we all know how exhausting it can be to work with people that are cynics and skeptics. We'll have to get to them eventually, but focusing on your collaborators and activists is where you're going to really make things happen. So that was something that was really important and influential that we learned, and I think we need to talk more about, is how can we use boundary spanning and differentiating across stakeholders to make things happen for our transfer students.
So with all this in mind, how do we build our transfer center on a non-centralized campus during a pandemic as well? We summarized it into 4 key steps that we did, and all of that takes into account what you just heard about just now. First, we talked to our transfer champions. We built our why factor. We made sure that we were never working alone, and we shared the impact of our collaborative work. So I'll go into some detail on these 4 bullets here. So for one, talking to our transfer champions, I will share with you that I think the first week or 2 that I was on campus starting these new transfer initiatives, Lindsay introduced me to so many people who were so passionate about transfer work. And people reached out to me to showcase that they were involved, they wanted to be involved in transfer work. So these transfer champions are our key influencers, activists, and collaborators, and they will give you the lay of the land as you seek them out as well. So in my case, this looked like a lot of coffee dates, a lot of lunches. I probably had some extra calories that I probably didn't need at the time, but it was worth it, right? We shared stories, we built trust, we exchanged ideas on transfer student needs. I learned so much about the political landscape as a new employee, but also, within their internal world as well. And in these great conversations, it allowed us to learn opportunities for partnership. So just building that relationship was so worth it. And that leads to step 2. So building relationships with your stakeholders across campus is important, but then what? What do we do next? We need to build our why factor, which includes gathering and distributing data. Why is the why factor important? Data informs our decision making. It justifies the work we do. It impacts our budgets, as you all know. And it ensures that we have an action plan based on results. And as we think about those skeptics and late majority folks, when they begin to hear about how we are reacting as it relates to the data we've received, they're going to be more incentivized. They're gonna come on board to the new thing that we are providing. What did this look like for us? Well, we did two things. We started with a transfer listening campaign. And this is where we collected qualitative and quantitative data from students on what their desires were for the Triton Transfer Hub. We also then hosted focus groups and attended TYE Transfer Year Experience courses to then take those desires and prioritize them. We're a startup. We cannot take on the world. We cannot. So how do we prioritize? And so we really took their information and prioritized it with the help of students. So, right, we collected the data. Then what did we do? We shared the data. We did a You Spoke, We Listened campaign, and we've done this twice now, now that we're in our second academic year. And this is where we share with transfer students their feedback and action. We wanted them to know that their voice is having an impact on the work we're doing, but also we're also showing the naysayers how our services will be guided by the data, who are students, right? Our services are guided by students. And so for background, what you see on the screen here is what the transfer students shared as their top 5 desired programs and services and partnership ideas. And then later on, it's how we responded. But basically what this was an infographic that we put out, we shared with our campus partners, and we also posted it on our website so everyone can know how we engage students in figuring out the next step. We also shared this with incoming students. And again, this is our second year doing something like this, and we let it inform what we do, and we make sure that everyone knows. So you can find this on our website. So with that, as I mentioned, one of the pieces of figuring out what students wanted was key partnerships. And so step 3, never work alone. Never work alone. It's taking those silos and breaking them down. And that's what we really tried to do. So we took our plans for how we wanted the Triton Transfer Hub to come to fruition based on student feedback, and we brought it to our collaborators to allow them to share in some of the work. What I have found thus far, and I share with you, is the more individuals we collaborated with, the more the late majority and the laggards bear witness, and then we'll want to collaborate in the future. My expression for this presentation is that FOMO is real, and we build FOMO, fear of missing out. So a lot of this is building FOMO for the late majority and the laggards. I'll bring that up a little bit more later. So what did this look like for us? For example, we worked with a campus community team to put together our mission statement. So the mission didn't come from my head, it came from the head of students. And when students started formulating a couple of mission ideas, we then took it to a group of faculty and staff who are partners. And we said, how should this look? And they helped tweak the mission so it spoke to everyone across the university. We also host specialized workshops in the hub and we do those in collaboration. So if we want to do something on wellness, we bring in CAPS, our mental health and physical health support services for students. You know, we make sure we're not just working within ourselves. We also reached out to majors to co-facilitate workshops for their unique transfer student needs. So second year transfer students need some love. We often focus on first year transfers and their experiences. So we asked departments, what do your transfer students need who are going into their second year? And we worked on a collaborative workshop and built partnerships that way. And we contacted advising. We worked with advising on how our peer coaches can support students as well and get students connected to advising in the most effective way. I'm going to add this piece though. Keep in mind that when you pilot something new, you will probably want to include everybody in it, you know, and often, right, we have 6 colleges on campus, and it could be hard for all 6 colleges to want to come on board. So rather than thinking about all of them, work with your collaborators and activists who want to see you be successful, and so you can create a strong pilot. This is just like Lindsay was saying, is knowing those transfer champions, starting there. And then once you have that first attempt done, you will be able to reach out to early and late majority partners, sharing the data that you've gathered along the way, and they'll come around. They'll be more interested because they've seen it done before. And then finally, step 4 is my favorite step, and it's continuously showing the impact of your great work and giving away credit as much as possible. So showcasing to your opinion leaders that your progress with showcasing to your opinion leaders the progress that you've had due to the partnerships along the way that have made you successful. And the more individuals that you showcase the impact to, this is going to sound very familiar to before, the more the naysayers and laggards will bear witness and come on board a little bit later, right? Again, building that FOMO. What this looked like for us is the concept of progress reports that are emailed out. And so an example of this, you'll see I put here our National Transfer Student Week data, which can be found on our website. And the first thing we do is thank our partners who participated in National Transfer Student Week. We could not do National Transfer Student Week without our partners. We want to make that very clear. And we had over 20 partnerships, so we want to share that as well. And then we also showcase here the impact of National Transfer Student Week. And this is also on our website, so students can find this. Students, faculty, and staff can find this anytime. So I'm going to pass it over to Lindsay, and we'll put this link into the chat.
Great. Thank you so much, Jackie. So Jackie walked through 4 steps of strategies that worked well for us. And I think it's really important to consider your own context, what works well for you, and the political landscape that you're navigating. But we really believe in crowdsourcing great ideas. So if you all could just go ahead and toggle over to the link that's on the chat or use the QR code. And in this Jamboard, we have 2 questions that we're asking you to really consider so that we can build each other's skills, right? So this first question is, what are some strategies you can consider for convincing cynics and skeptics to get on board with your transfer student success efforts? We shared a little bit that for us, it was lots of coffee dates, knowing who the partners are, leveraging FOMO, right? And sharing results of the great work that happens through folks that were the early collaborators. And then the second question asks, let me just click on it real quick. What are some ways you can best engage your collaborators and activists? Because although we do have folks that are going to say yes, those are probably also the people that are saying yes to lots of other things. So how we can continue to sustain those relationships. If you're unable to, let's see, if you're unable to get into the bit.ly link, we will go ahead and paste the long link in the chat as well. Thanks so much, Megan, for bringing that up. So we're going to spend about 3 to 5 minutes here crowdsourcing and getting ideas from each other. And this link will also be available to you all in the future so that you can share it with your transfer advisory board or your strategic plan committee. And you can say, at NISTS, we crowdsourced strategies. Which are the ones that we're going to take an action on first?
Lindsay, are you able to find the long link?
Yeah, I just pasted it. Megan, let us know if that works for you.
You're a victim of your own success. It says there's too many people viewing the Google to get in. So nice job, UCSD.
Yay,
popular session.
Oh, thank you, Megan. We'll make sure to feel free to type them in the chat. And one thing that we could do is copy and paste them into the Jamboard for future use. So we're seeing some really great sticky notes here. Using transfer student academic success indicators, that's huge. One thing that Jackie and I did early on is we took our institutional research champion to yogurt. And I told Jackie, I was like, Jackie, we need to make sure that this partner knows us, loves us, and really knows what are the critical key questions for transfer students. So that's something that I think is really important to consider, is how solid are your relationships with folks that can pull data for you, especially in campuses where sometimes their data governance strategies are not easy to access. Let's see, what else? Infographics make everyone believe. Is that what that says? Yes, Jackie was so phenomenal in not only building a website in like 2 days, but also creating some beautiful infographics. And there's lots of free resources around infographics as well. Let the students tell the stories. This is so powerful. One thing that UC San Diego is really trying to make happen, like, you know, we're trying to make fetch happen on Mean Girls, is this concept called student-centeredness. So one thing that's really unique about UC San Diego is faculty governance is very strong. But even though faculty governance is really strong, student sense of belonging is actually not that high, especially for transfer students. So our campus is really trying to be both. How is it that we can be a strong, solid research one, but also make sure that our students are getting the experience that they're really longing for? And through these listening campaigns that Jackie launched, we were really able to gather powerful stories about transfer students. And that's one strategy that I think naysayers should really consider, right? If you have a grumpy naysayer cynic, give them a powerful quote, right? A powerful quote that talks about, I am a transfer student and I feel othered. If they look at that quote and they still don't want to work with you, then they probably shouldn't be in higher education, right? But we also know that that happens. Jackie, do you think we could toggle over to the next question? Great. So thanks, everyone. So here we're asking you, how can we make sure that we are engaging your collaborators and activists? So remember, these are the folks that say yes a lot. And I love this, have funding to support initiatives. It's fascinating how even something as small as a $100 gift card for co-sponsoring an event is enough for trust building and relationship building. So that's really great. Monthly or quarterly meetings, absolutely. Also, I think being really cognizant about, you know, staff agendas, making sure that they have them in advance so folks know what they're walking into and how they can best contribute. Everyone wants to feel that they're a part of something. Yes, inviting them to meetings, listening to students work to meet their needs. Figure out where your goals align, absolutely. Mutual synergy is particularly important, especially for such an important student population like transfer students, which we know as demographics change, everyone's going to have to recognize how important and key transfer students are for our college going student population. Great. So Jackie, I want to make sure we're okay on time. So like I shared with you all, we will send links to this Jamboard. One great idea that you could do is literally review this with your coalition of transfer champions, cynics, naysayers, and really help to influence what transfer experts such as yourself are saying nationally. So where are we now? So through lots of different opportunities, we're really conscious about making sure these key partnerships have those mutual synergies. I think that one thing that has been really phenomenal for UC San Diego is really recognizing and giving shout outs to human capital. And we're really fortunate to have Jackie's leadership. Her dissertation experience really focused on, I think, even forecasting what might happen with virtual engagement. So having her expertise on how is it that we could have a transfer center that could cross boundaries related to space and time. We're just so fortunate to have her expertise around that. Yes. And we hosted, you know, a National Transfer Student Week. Our campus had never done that before. So at first it was really small. This was prior to the pandemic. We did small things, you know, like cupcakes for transfers, nacho night at the village, right? Like those kinds of things. And then in the next year, the virtual environment really allowed for this phenomenal opportunity to ask other people, hey, what is your stake in the game related to transfers and what are you going to do? And some other things here. Jackie, do you want to chime in on some of these other aspects?
Yeah, sure. So basically what we tried to do is, you know, for every transfer need, there's probably a great partner on campus who has a lot of expertise. So in fall, we were able, and it was our first fall, I should add, as a space, but we partnered with over 15 departments for fall 20 to host different events for transfer students. Again, this concept of continuously building and using the virtual environment was to our advantage as well when it came to working with faculty and staff. We created a virtual self-paced interactive transfer ally training for faculty and staff, which spread through word of mouth. I mean, we shared it across the university, but when one person who is a transfer champion in one college experienced it, they shared it with the orientation team. And the orientation leader said, well, let's make sure all who are interacting with transfer students take this. So what started as a faculty staff ally training ended up also being for student staff who are a part of orientations. That's just an example of how, again, a transfer champion and making sure that they're aware of what's going on, word can spread. We also this quarter hosted an art contest in which faculty and staff acted as coaches and judges. And we had to turn volunteers away, which was just a positive sign for our growing partnerships and also just providing a little bit of happiness, art within this really tough time. It was really wonderful to see that both the coaches and the judges were positively impacted. So giving a creative outlet for people to participate with us was amazing. And then we just keep reaching out to more partners as projects arise, as we go into phase 2 of every quarter. So basically people see successful partnerships and that leads them to also want to partner. And so that's how we've sort of been pretty successful. Do you want to wrap things up, Lindsay?
Yes, absolutely. So how is it that we survive and thrive? So thinking about starting from the bottom, we are definitely not at the bottom anymore and it feels good. So some of the things that I think is really important is talk to your transfer champions. Who are those folks? One of the early things that Jackie did was actually ask faculty and staff, are any of you transfers? And it was so powerful to see who were the folks that shared that lived experience and, creating a directory of them and asking them, hey, do you want to help out? And they said yes. Building the why factor. And you all hit the nail on the head, how important it is to really focus on the stories of our students. Third, never work alone. There's enough work to go around, right? So really working on those opportunities to capitalize relationships. And then I think we need to do more and more of this is sharing the impact of our collaborative work. Not only is it great for leveraging FOMO, but it's also important for key leaders. Sometimes Jackie and I will attend meetings and it's so powerful to hear leaders above you sharing the talking points that you sent them in an email or sharing the talking points that they got from your website, right? So they might not have to be the transfer experts, but help them with understanding, here are the people that are saying yes to transfer student success, here are the partnerships, and let me make it easy for you. Here are 2 easy, quick data points related to qualitative experiences and also quantitative experiences of our transfer students. So we are close to running out of time and we just wanted to make sure that we answered some of the questions that were in the chat. Our contact information is also listed here. Please do not hesitate to reach out via email or you can find us on LinkedIn. So with that, there was one question, let me see here. So one question that came up, I hope that was answered. Shelley had asked, what do you do when people that can funnel your work to the collaborators and activists are cynics and skeptics, and you can't move anything forward without them based on institutional infrastructure? So I think one thing that is really important in this case is managing up. So Jackie and I have no problem asking the folks above us that are paid a lot more to handle these political battles and really being transparent and saying, hey, we're facing some bottlenecks and here's A, B, and C and why, and letting them know some of the solutions-oriented strategies that you've already tried. And I think that's one thing, Shelley, that could be helpful. I also invite our partners across this call to go ahead and type in some suggestions for Shelley as well. So then I'm sure you all have experienced this. The other question is from Penn State, and Jackie, maybe you can answer this. Were these initiatives in order to get the center approved in the first place or to get it up and running after approval had already been given? If the latter, how are you able to gain approval to even create such a center? So would you like to answer that, Jackie? And I can help as well.
Sure, sure. So we were already approved to have a Triton transfer hub. We were given pretty general expectations. Run a transfer hub, make sure it focuses on sense of belonging, connecting students, and have peer coaches. And we're like, okay, we could do that. And from there, it was let's also talk to students so we can take this vision and make it tangible. So how do we build belonging? How do we connect to resources? So it started off as broad strokes, and then we just funneled it down with the support of students sharing what they desired. Lindsay, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, and I will say that I think it's also important to really recognize when a pilot is a pilot. So one thing that Jackie and I are really conscious about and making sure that our folks above us understand is this is great and this is phenomenal, but we need more, right? So if transfers are a third of the student population, we can't just have one dedicated FTE and a handful of peer coaches, right? What are some other ways that institutional commitment can happen? So I want to recognize that growing pains are real, that growing pains in a time of pandemic and decreased resources is also real. So I want to validate that. I don't want to enter this from a lens of toxic positivity, but I think it's really important to consider what is your context? How is it that we can continue to serve the students, but what are the real resources we need in place to make this happen? So we're living that situation now, and we hope that more will come for it, just because we want to leverage the fact that we can't be student-centered and not be transfer receptive, especially when a third of our undergraduate student body have the lived experience of being transfer students. All right. Anything else?
One thing I'll share, I've seen some great questions about the ally training that we put together, and I'm so glad there's interest in this. It was really fun to put together. Unfortunately, because of how it's set up, we cannot share the training as a link. I am hoping that it's something we can bring to you all at the next NISTS conference. But also, if you just send me an email, I can either share an outline or some general information. I also believe there is a workshop occurring that Heather Adams is facilitating, and we talk a little bit about the general topics and what the course looks like in that, and it's all about advocating for transfer students. It's 11:15, so I think we're out of time. So I guess we'll say goodbye. I'm going to stop my share and just say it's nice to have met you all. If you have questions, please reach out to us. I'll put my email in the chat, and we look forward to hearing from you. And if anyone's going through the same experience of opening a new transfer center, not an easy thing to do. So way to go, all. Let's talk. Y'all take care.
Bye, everybody. Thank you for joining us.